Hey everyone, it's Hope. I am still recovering from the virus which shall not be named. I'm really not feeling up to being on this week's program, so Larry has gone rogue. He's taking over this week's program for Under the Median, and he's going to tell you all the story of how we met and whether we've always been extremely frugal. I'm a little nervous because my boys tell me that he's been scouring forgotten corners of the house looking for vintage photos and maybe even some video clips. So sit back and enjoy how we met and whether we were always this frugal.
Well, hello. This is Larry from Under the Median. And as you heard, I'm going to be pinch hitting on this video for Hope as she is a little bit under the weather. So I thought it would be easy for me just to tell a little bit of our story on how we met and some of our early dating years. So the video that's running behind me is one that we recorded for some friends of ours who had moved to Arizona. And we sent them videotapes and they sent us tapes, and that's how we kept in touch. So I've got hours and hours of videotape. So I'll roll some of those in. The one playing happens to be Hope and I washing our cars. And I think this was recorded back in probably May of 1988, if I'm remembering correctly. Say hi.
Hi.
You're really on camera, Jack.
Look at the result of washing a car with Larry. I just feel I should have been more prepared to get wet.
So basically the story starts out at our local community college, Illinois Central College over in East Peoria. I had attended it originally back in the fall of 1975 when I thought I was going to be an electrical technician. And that didn't really turn out. I didn't really like the curriculum, and I could tell that I wasn't really going to like the career. So I dropped out of college for about 7 years. And when I went back, I had changed my career and decided to go into broadcasting. So Hope and I just happened to be both taking the very same class, and that's how we met. In August of 1982, when the class started, we were all introduced to each other. And when I stood up to give my name, the Lord kind of tapped Hope on the shoulders and said, "This man is going to be very important in your life." And of course, that turned out to be quite true. And she became very important in my life. I had no idea back then, though. When we first met, Hope was 18. She was just out of high school, having graduated in 1982. And of course, I'd been out a while. I graduated in 1975. So I was 25 years old by the time that I went back to school. So I'm 7 years older than Hope. And although that gap doesn't seem like very much now, it did back then. So the way we actually met, we didn't really meet until October of 1982, when our instructor got sick and canceled the class. So we were all standing outside of the classroom, just kind of chit-chatting. And that's when I met Hope. I introduced myself to her. And as I'm talking to her, I had my textbook. This is the textbook that I had. And as I was holding on to it, this pamphlet, it's a last day's newsletter from Keith Green. It happens to be his memorial issue. He was a very prominent Christian contemporary music artist, and he had gotten killed in a plane accident when he was only, I believe he was 28 years old. But this came out this is the September-October 1982 issue. When this fell on the floor face up, Hope saw it and she goes, "Are you a Christian?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she goes, "So am I." And that began our friendship. And we've remained friends to this very day. So Hope and I really didn't start dating then, but we would go out, we would go to Hardee's, and after class, so we would talk about, class things that we were studying, and kind of just got to know each other. And I really enjoyed her as a friend. It was just a very fun friendship. Her being so much younger than I really didn't see us getting into a dating relationship. But as we got to spend more and more time together, and doing a little more maybe serious things together, going out to eat more often and so on. I think the pivotal time in the relationship was when we went up to Starved Rock State Park together in my little black Chevette. I had an old 1979 Chevette, although it wasn't old back then. It was only about 4 years old. Starved Rock State Park is a real nice state park, one of the nicest ones in the state of Illinois. It's only about an hour and a half's drive from where we live here in Peoria. And so we went up there for the day. And we packed our lunch. Hope packed tuna fish sandwiches, and I can't remember what I took, but I packed the rest of the lunch, and we spent the day together and had a really nice time. And that's when I think we really got to know each other much better. An interesting thing happened on that little excursion, though. While we were walking up near the lodge, a chipmunk ran right out in front of her, and she ended up stepping on it, this poor thing, and killing it. And, how often does something like that happen? It was just a kind of a freak accident. And then another little tidbit to that story, we drove back home, and we went back to her house, and put our stuff away, and then we wanted to go out to eat at our local Hardee's. It was pouring rain. In fact, it was raining all the way back from Starved Rock. But when we got to, she lived up on a hill up in East Peoria, with a real steep hill. And of course, the Chevette is a 4-speed, and it has manual transmission, manual steering, manual brakes. There's no power to that car, so that I could shut the car off and run it when the car wasn't running. Now, the car had a little problem with the starter, and the starter had a spot in it where it wouldn't work. Somehow there must have been a break in the coil or something. I don't know a whole lot about how a starter is designed, but when it got to that spot, it wouldn't make contact. So we're going down the hill, and I'm showing her how you can just drive this car with no power, and it drives just fine. I get to the bottom, and I go to start it up, and it wouldn't start. It had gotten into that spot. Well, Hope didn't know how to drive a standard shift car. And so the only person that could get out and push was Hope. And so here it was pouring rain, our first date, and she has to get out and push my car. Not a real good first impression here, huh? So she got out and pushed it. We got the car started, and of course we went to Hardee's and had our meal. So that basically was our first date, although I don't know that I would call it our official date. It was a pivotal change in the relationship. And we really started officially dating probably in June, just less than a month later. And then by July of the same year, 1983, we were going steady. And we did an awful lot that summer. We took a lot of trips up to Starved Rock. We lived very frugally, even in our dating life. Although I don't think we were quite as deliberate about living frugally as we are now. But we did a lot of very simple things. There's a lot of parks in Peoria, Forest Park Nature Center. We would go out there and spend the day. We'd pack our lunch, pack a picnic lunch. We spent a lot of time, just watching movies on our TV. I had a VCR. Not too many people had a VCR back then, but I had one, and we would watch shows and recordings. We didn't really go out to movies much. That was just too expensive. So we really spent our early dating years, just kind of mostly going for walks and spending time like that. So now the thing is, we dated twice, so this is kind of an unusual part of our story. We dated from about May of '83 until, I'm thinking it was about September of 1984. We dated about a year and a half, or a year and a quarter, as it is, and we broke up. And we actually, in that time period, had even gotten engaged. But I don't think the timing was right. There were some pressures from family that were kind of affecting our relationship, and we just had some things that just weren't clicking into place. So we broke up, and we stayed broke up for 3 years. In that 3-year time, Hope really learned how to budget. This is when she learned how to really make ends meet. Now, she didn't make a lot of money at WPEO. where she worked. She worked at a local Christian radio station, WPEO AM. She was the board operator. Funny story about that is she's not a morning person. And so she had to get up at about 5 o'clock in the morning, turn the station, turn the transmitter on the air, start everything in the station, and begin the air shift. And she was on the mic and introducing programs and so on.
At AM 1020, this is WPEO Peoria.
Here's my baby.
Good afternoon. I'm Hope Holliday with you on a Christmas Day afternoon. WPEO, as always at this time of the year on this particular day, presents Christmas music during the afternoon hours. The first quarter hour of this tribute to the birth of Christ in the form of music is brought to you by Grimm's Restaurant. It's located at 1801 North Morton Avenue at the Marathon Truck Stop in Morton.
But she did well at that, and it was exciting for her because she was really finally into her career job. I think that was only her second job, so she did really well. But she didn't make a lot of money at that job, so she shared a home with two other really nice gals, and that is where she learned to make ends meet when there weren't a lot of ends. While I was broke up with her, I just spent the time, I traveled, I did some backpacking trips, I was still going to school. One of the trips that I did in school, I took a trip to the Southwest, and I continued working. I was working a security job at a place called Komatsu Dresser, and during that job, I had plenty of time to do my homework, so I could do my homework while I was actually working there. Well, the interesting thing about some of the backpacking trips, the last one that I went on was the summer of 1987. I had a new Chevette by that time, and I drove it out west to the Sangre de Cristo mountain range. That's 115 miles straight west of Colorado Springs. Beautiful mountains, 13,000 foot plus peaks. And my brother Dave talked me into doing some backpacking. And so I backpacked up into those Sangre de Cristo mountains at a place called Lake of the Clouds. There were two other couples there, and they had a little golden retriever with them. They had a fire going. They were fishing. They had wine cooling in the mountain stream. And I had my little geodesic dome tent, and I had a little 2-inch TV I was watching. Of course, I did a lot of hiking while I was there, but at night I would just, I had some books. I think I had some Shakespeare plays I was reading, and and I'm watching TV. All the time I can hear them across the lake having a great time, laughing, the crackle of the fire going, and I thought, you know what, this is the last time that I'm going to do this alone. So that I really made up my mind at that point that I wasn't going to be single. So I had kept in contact with Hope. We kind of called each other or talked maybe once a year. And when I got back home from that trip, I called her and I asked her First off, I asked her if she was still single, and she was. She'd been dating. She actually dated quite a few people while we were broke up. But at that time that I called her, she wasn't dating anybody. So we went out to a restaurant, and that seemed to go pretty good. Well, then I invited her over to my house. Now this would have been September of 1987. And I just happened to be playing with some new video equipment. I had a black and white Sony camera, and this was a system that I had purchased from where I was working. It was old 1970s equipment. The recorder was a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and it recorded video. We had one like that at our high school back in the mid-70s. And it did a nice job of recording in black and white. I didn't pay a lot of money for it. I didn't have a lot of money, so this was a very cheap system. Camcorders back in 1987 were well over $1,000. So I think I paid a little over $100 for this equipment. And so I was testing it out when she came over, so I happened to catch her on videotape. So I'll play a little clip of where she comes to the front door.
Doing a little bit of fixing here. Hi there. How are you, Hope? And this is a chicken that's in the oven now and cooking by the time you get here. And I'm just putting it in the pan right now, okay? Here's the, there, one. Well, hi. How are you? Good. Come on in. Unfortunately, you caught me while I was recording, so you're on tape. Come on in.
Oh no!
Say hi.
Hi!
So this camera, I use this camera, and you can see some video behind us of us. Here we are washing. It looks like we're washing her car, and I did a lot of video recording for a couple of friends of ours who had moved out to Arizona, Dale and Mary. And so we recorded hours and hours of tapes together. So that's why I have all this footage of Hope and I when we're dating. And we have some footage of us when we're married. And then finally, of course, when we had kids, I bought a camcorder, a real camcorder, and we recorded quite a bit of video. So I've got a lot of video of us together. So I'll roll some of that in while I'm telling our story here.
Well, this is February the 3rd, 1988.
No, it's March the 3rd.
Oh, yeah, it is. It says March the 3rd. Silly of me, isn't it? It's March the 3rd, 1988, and we're just sitting here. This is Hope's apartment. We thought we might bring the video equipment over. We'll be showing you more of Hope's apartment upcoming, but this is her living room.
Except the dirty part.
Except the one wall. We have everything stacked sky high, that we had to move out of this room in order for you to make it look nice.
We did not. I keep my apartment clean.
Well, yeah, but that's this part of it anyway. Why don't you go get some popcorn or something and really
Coke, popcorn, some Cokes,
yeah, really enjoy the show. And but we've just been busy planning away and making lists and making sure that
We've made tons of lists. The only problem with the lists is either I lose them or they grow totally out of proportion. I just keep adding to the list, and it seems like it's one of those never-ending things that just keeps going and going and going, and
yeah, that's
there's
for
no
sure.
end.
But you know how it is. I mean, you know how it was when you guys were getting married.
And then you've got all the little people that go, "Am I invited?" And you're in, "No."
Yeah, that's the roughest part. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what else is interesting? For my position as music director, I have to read this magazine once a month called CCM, Contemporary Christian Music Magazine. And they had an article in there a few months ago that was saying that the sales of... Sorry, honey, I know you don't like me to gesture when I talk. He's always smacking me because when...
But the reason why...
They probably didn't appreciate that right in the microphone.
With my tape recorder.
Whenever I talk, I'm a hand person. I always use my hands to gesture.
Me too.
He always gets
What I was really saying was... Mary.
Stop it. He always gets really mad at me because I do it. Stop it. Quit it. I look at the camera when I'm talking, and I never know what he's doing behind my back.
It's interesting that some of the things that I thought that I wanted in a mate, in a wife, were not the things that Hope was. So I had a list that I had made back in the early 80s. I actually wrote down some characteristics that I thought would be really good to have for me, for a wife. Now here's some of the things I wrote down. I wanted a tall, slender gal who was, probably about my age, had long brown hair, liked to ride a bike, liked to do a lot of maybe camping, backpacking, do some of the things that I like to do. It was somebody who was very quiet and peaceful and serene. And interesting enough, that is not Hope at all. In fact, hardly any of those things would describe Hope. But what I thought I wanted and what I got were really two different things, because Hope was really what I needed. Hope is very outgoing. She's like a force of nature. In fact, all the time we were dating, she was usually a step ahead of where I was. When she bought this car, my dad helped her find this 1981 Chevy Citation. I loaned her $100 for it. And I thought, well, I've got that much money invested in her. I better make good on it. So it was that very night that I actually asked her to marry me. But let me back up to explain a little bit of how we got back together when we broke up. of course, I'd had her over on that one September 23rd, 1987, and I got that had that video that I rolled in on it. And somehow it didn't seem to click then, but by November, in fact, by Thanksgiving of 1987, I asked her to come over again, and this was on Thanksgiving Day. In fact, I think actually I went over to her apartment because she had an apartment by that time. She had moved out of the house with the two girls and got an apartment with a friend of hers in Peoria. And I went over there and took my VCR, and we were going to watch some movies. It was that night that we really clicked, and that's when we really, I guess you'd say, got back together. And it didn't take much time. She bought this car in January of '88. That's when we got engaged, and we got married in June of 1988, June 11th. So it went pretty fast after that. When we got married, I was almost 31 years old. I was 30. I turned 31 about a month after we got married. Hope was 23. She's 7 years younger than me. So we were both very ready to get married by that time. We'd had plenty of time to be single and kind of do our own thing. So it was very, very nice to get into that relationship. Now, I mentioned some good friends that we sent these videotapes to, Dale and Mary. They had a great relationship. I knew Dale from high school. We had met back in 1971 at a local high school, and he was really my best friend all through high school. So Dale and Mary gave me some really good advice, actually, to both Hope and I, on finances and marriage. And one of the things that they had taught us was never buy anything without checking with the other person and being in agreement on the purchase. If you're not both in complete agreement, don't do it. And that became very sound advice for both of us. We put that to action, and we kept that at the forefront of any time that we were going to make a purchase. We checked in with each other, and if one of us didn't agree, we weren't supposed to have it. And I have to admit, I had to make some adjustments because I was used to just doing whatever I wanted to with my money. And so that really did become kind of the forefront of our financial agreement. What are the characteristics I think that really helped Hope and I to get along? And this helped me realize that she was really the right partner for me. We had very similar backgrounds. This is almost a coincidence that her mom was raised in a little town just west of here called Yates City. Well, that's the city that my dad grew up in, and he went to Yates City High School. In fact, both her mom and my dad went to Yates City High School, although at much different times. Hope grew up in a little town called Elmwood, and my mom had also lived in Elmwood. Hope was one of four, and I am one of four. Hope's dad worked in a factory, and so did my dad. So Hope was raised kind of in a blue-collar family, and so was I. Her mom, as far as I know, she didn't work at all during the early years, and mine didn't either. So we basically grew up in homes with almost equal economic conditions. So we were both kind of used to living in a certain way. So when we came together, there really wasn't a lot of adjustments there. And that really did help quite a bit in our early years of our marriage. One of the books that I read while we were engaged was a very helpful book that kind of helped set the foundations for some of our relationship in our early years. This is a book called Love Life for Every Married Couple, and it's by a doctor named Ed Wheat. And one of the chapters in here talks about criticism, and it kind of warns against being very critical of your partner. And it also suggests that you don't make critical statements. And I really took that advice to heart. When I had a critical thought about something that Hope was doing, I really tried just to keep my mouth shut. Just don't say anything. And rather make statements of praise, tell her what she's doing right, what she's, how good she's doing, for instance, for, cooking or whatever it is. But I tried to keep the critical statements completely off the table. And as you build up your partner, you build up your relationship. And that comes back to you, because the way you treat your partner is the way they're going to treat you. I think I've mentioned this before, but I just want to touch on it again. And we'll probably do a second video when Hope's able to do another video here. We'll do one together on this. We'll do a part 2, how we met. But one of the things that we kind of took into our marriage was, not going into debt for things. Now, we were in some debt when we first got married. We were both paying on cars, but that was our only debt. I had bought a brand new 1987 Chevette. I think I paid $5,400 for the car, and I had a 4-year loan. It was $111 a month car payment. This car that that's the car. that's the 87 Chevette now that we're washing. But her 1981 Citation, I think she paid maybe $1,300 for that car, and she did take out a loan. If I remember right, we paid that off pretty fast. Then the next car that Hope bought was a it was a 1987 silver Chevette, and we took out a year loan. We paid that off for 6 months, and that was after we were married, of course. But that was our last car loan. So we did come into debt there. But for our wedding, we did not put out a lot of money on our wedding. I think out of pocket, we might have put out, I'm sure it was much less than $500. It might have been closer to $300. My parents offered to pay for quite a bit of the reception, and we had a very simple reception, just cake and punch, and I think we had some peanuts and mints to serve the guests. For our honeymoon, we didn't spend a lot of money on that. Hope's folks had bought us an evening stay at Jumer Castle Lodge in town, and then we took a trip up to Starved Rock and stayed in a cabin. And believe it or not, the cabin at that time only cost $40 a night. Now they're a lot more expensive now. After that, we took my mom and dad's old car and trailer down to Southern Illinois, and we camped down there for a little over a week down in Shawnee National Forest. Real pretty. So we had very low overhead, and that is something that we carried that from our dating through our getting married. Hope's dress didn't cost a lot. We've covered this on another video too, but a friend of hers bought it and they found one for $25. It was a real nice dress. They kind of outfitted it and made it really nice. So that's what we did for our wedding. Okay, I want to address the equipment that's behind me here. This is a television set that I had when Hope and I were dating. It's not the exact one. It's identical to it. I replaced it because the original one went out. And so the point is we keep things a very long time, and that's part of our frugal living. The other thing is this cabinet is an old radio cabinet from the 1930s. It belonged to a neighbor of mine that I used to do yard work for. And the agreement was that I mowed her lawn several times to pay for the radio, and then she gave me the radio. So I've had this since about 1973. It had an old 1933 Philco radio in it that I played in high school. That eventually was replaced with stereo equipment that I put in here, and this was kind of our entertainment center for actually several years during our early married life as well. So that is part of our kind of our frugal mindset, that we don't really replace things very often. So now I'd like to get to the questions here. So there are several questions that our viewers submitted to Hope. The first one is from Certain Ree, and it says, Larry, were one of you more confident than the other in the dating stage, or were either of you shy? Well, I can tell you without any hesitation that it was Hope that was the more confident one. And there's nothing shy about Hope. And I would definitely fall into that category, being a classic introvert. I love spending time by myself. Hope loves other people. She'll spend all kinds of time talking with other people. We'll go out and she'll see people everywhere, and she just strikes up conversations with them. She's amazing. So so definitely I would be the shyer one. I enjoy spending time by myself. I do things by myself, like backpacking that I used to do, bike riding. I go out on a lot of solo bike rides. I enjoy working by myself. But Hope, boy, she's the people person. Can you think of a memory when you felt butterflies, or were you always cool, calm, and collected? Well, the only thing that really comes to mind on that is when we got married. I don't think Hope or I were extremely cool or calm that day. It was a nerve-wracking day, and we were exhausted by the end of the day. I really wanted a small wedding. I didn't want a big wedding, and not that it was that big. It was maybe 100 people were at our wedding total. My mom wanted some of her friends and the relatives there. Otherwise, Hope and I were just going to get married with the pastor and a few close friends and maybe our parents. So I think we felt butterflies that day. Regina asks, Larry, my questions would have to be, how long did it take for you to ask Hope out on a date? Well, our first date was May of 1983, May 23rd, 1983. And I met her probably in the latter parts of October of 1982. But we were friends. I mean, we went out, we did things together. I went over to her house, met her mom, met her brothers. We went to Hardee's, we went on hikes. We spent a lot of time together. And so we were friends. We were just really good friends before we started dating. So I think it just kind of dovetailed into a dating relationship from a friendship. When was your biggest argument, and did it result in a cold shoulder situation or a kiss and makeup almost right away? Well, while we were dating, I really can't think of any real big arguments that we ever had. We just really didn't argue that much. We did get into one little disagreement it was actually at her radio station. I was visiting WPEO where she worked, and the meters were going into the red. Now, if you do any recording, especially on the old tape recorders, there's the red part of the meter. You don't want to put the needles into that part, or you'll be distorting or overdriving your audio. And I saw those indicators doing that, and I said, you're overdriving your audio. And she says, don't you think I know how to run the board? And she'd done it for several years. She did know how to run the board. Well, what she told me later was the station has compressors and limiters built in that cause that signal to be not overdriven. So she was doing fine. I just didn't understand how her equipment was set up. So I should have just kept my mouth shut. That would have been better off. We did have an argument when we first got married. I think the biggest argument we had was over the first house that we rented. We were in an apartment. We were spending $290 a month. It was more than we can afford on our wages. And we found a house just a couple blocks away, $200 a month. And it was an amazing, cute little house. It had all been remodeled. It was adorable, but it did not have a washer or a dryer or any closet space. Had one closet, and it did not have a refrigerator or a stove. Now, we had all those in the apartment, and it didn't have any curtains. So we were going to have to buy all those things, and that was just a little overwhelming for me. And I thought, oh boy, we're really going to be into it, and we have no storage there. But Hope was really adamant about it, and we kind of locked horns on it. I walked out of the apartment, and I walked down to the house. I remember it was kind of a cool fall starry night, and I looked at the house, and I looked up, and I said, Lord, you know whether we should rent this house or not. And I got 2 words back, and the 2 words were, she's right. And I always remember those words. Most of the time, that's the truth. She's right. So I went back home, and I came into the apartment, and I looked at her in the eye, and I said, I just got one thing to say to you. And she goes, what? You're right. So yeah, we made up right away. I was wrong, so it makes it pretty easy when you're wrong to make up. So I think that was the biggest argument, and and that got settled. And as far as the house worked out, we ended up finding a used refrigerator and a stove for, I think, $135. My mom and dad offered to let us do the washing over at their house. And we did pretty good with that one closet space. Mom and Dad stored some of our things for a while until we got our first real house. And we made it work, and it worked out just fine. Name one habit about each other, Regina continues here, that you wished would have changed, but eventually accepted it.
Regina, that's a great question. We decided to have some fun with this one. So I am going to give my answer how I think Larry's going to answer, and he is not allowed to edit at all. And then he's going to take his turn and answer the question. And with no edits, you're going to see if we nailed what the other one would say. So if I had to guess what Larry would most like to change about me, but just sort of gave up and accepted it, was the fact that I constantly lose my keys and my purse and my phone. And so he has spent 32 years walking around behind me. And after the first few times of saying, if you just had a specific place to put them every night, they would always be there, he just started eventually smiling and saying, where was the last place you remember seeing them? And then he graciously helped me find my stuff. But if there's anything I do that irritates him, probably more than anything else, I'm going to say, that's my guess. I can't wait to see what he says. What I would change about Larry forgets stuff, man. He forgets entire conversations. And so it used to really frustrate me, seriously, when we first got married. I was like, does he live in the same house I do? And so I thought, this is kind of stupid, because part of what was happening was I was relaying information to him he had no part of, if I was going out on Thursday night with my friends, just me, I would expect him to remember. And he was like, look, I got no part of your girl, coffee date. So yeah, I've forgotten you're going. And so I just finally decided, either this is going to be something where I constantly harangue him, why can't you remember this? Or I just accept it and go on with life. So eventually I started doing one of two things. Either I would start repeating conversations and he would have no memory at all. And I could tell, in his face, he was he had no idea what I was talking about. I would just either repeat it as though it was the first time I told him, even though I knew it wasn't. Or I would look at him and I would say, do we live in the same house? Or I would say, I would make some funny quip about it that put him, eventually he'd look at me and go, we've had this conversation, haven't we? I can tell by the way you're looking at me. I'm like, yeah, but it's okay. I'm just going to repeat the details to you. Or I'd write it down and hand it to him. But I learned that one of the things with Larry is I've got to have his undivided attention, because he does not multitask well. No, he doesn't. And so I would say, I need your attention. I need all of your attention. And that was actually really helpful to get him to remember things. So I'm anxious to see what he says is the thing that he thinks I would say about him. So, all right, this is going to be unedited, guys, both of our responses. Enjoy.
Well, Hope is not very organized at times. And, she's a workforce, but she's not very organized. And the funny thing, and I didn't notice this really until we got married, there were three things she could not track. She could not track her keys, her purse, or her glasses. So I was a little irritated with that at first, and then I just had to finally say, you know what? That's just who she is. So I helped her establish some places for all those items and just kind of tried to work with her to help her find places to put those things so she wouldn't always be looking for them. And she's really gotten a lot better. She's doing great. She doesn't really misplace those items anymore, but she does misplace her cell phone. And the only other thing that she does is that she leaves her desktop on her computer just full of all kinds of icons, folders, documents. I mean, they're all over her desktop. It's just an amazing array of things. But, that's her computer. I try to keep mine kind of neat and cleaned off, and it isn't perfect, but I can at least find things on it. that's Hope. So I'm good. She has so many, outstanding characteristics that way make up for any of her little weaknesses. And, I can't stay irritated very long. She's just so cute. So, that's how I would answer that. Once again, you just have to kind of accept people the way they are. And you just, you can't stay irritated. It's no good. It doesn't build a good relationship. Pat says, did you know each other before you started dating? Yes, we did. We obviously knew each other very well. And we'd spent a lot of time talking to each other, and we knew our backgrounds. And, we're still things I think we're still learning about each other. But by the time we got finished with our dating process, we knew each other very well. Ron and I met on a blind date, so I like to hear those kinds of details about other people. Well, that's wonderful, Pat. Trandon says, get well soon, Hope. And we are hoping for that. I look forward to hear Larry tell us the story about the two of you. How early on did you feel or know that this was the person you would like to spend the rest of your life with? Well, I really knew for sure after we got back together the second time, and that would have been November of 1987. That's when I really knew this was the woman that God had for me. And I really think that if I hadn't married Hope, I think I would still be single. I really think that she was the only one. And I'm very glad I married her. It was a very, very good decision. Anna Micah says, what ideas did you have about marriage before and after you got married? Well, I had a good example in my parents, and I can only speak for myself. Hope will have to address the issue with her background. I don't know what she would say about that. But for my folks, they did everything together. They mowed the lawn together. They did laundry together. They cooked together. They did dishes together. They went on vacations together. They spent their time together. They didn't spend much time apart. They spent time in the evenings reading in the same room, or they didn't watch a lot of television. They really did more reading together. And of course, they spent a lot of times with friends. So and they had a very good, solid relationship. It wasn't a perfect marriage, but it was pretty close. And so that's what I wanted to do with Hope and I. I definitely wanted to make our relationship where we were really together and as one, the way God intended marriage to be. Sherry Ellison says, I'd be interested in knowing where and when in your courtship the two of you decided to be on the debt-free page together. Well, Sherry, we didn't really decide that until we got married. That's when that came into focus. We were all still paying on 2 cars, and that's when we were dating the second time. She was paying on a 1981 Citation. I was paying on a brand new car I had purchased in 1987 Chevette. So we didn't really get on that page. It was a kind of a gradual thing. She was actually putting a program on her station on WPEO. It was the host was Larry Burkett. It was a talk-in show. It was a lot like David Ramsey, and one of his main emphasis was on being debt-free. And the thing that he would always say was, when you get out of debt, you've essentially given yourself a raise. Every time you get out of debt on something, you clear a credit card, you clear a car, you clear your house, then you have more income to work with in your budget. So that gives you essentially a raise. And that really stuck with me. So I worked hard with Hope to get us into that situation. Hope did the very hard work. I just worked with her on it. Elaine Bard says, get well soon, Hope. Well, thank you, Elaine. As long as we're all asking nosy questions, how much money did you guys spend on your first date and where did you go? Well, of course, I've covered that. We went to Starved Rock State Park. It's about a 130-mile round trip. Drove a little black 1979 Chevette. That car got about 33, maybe 35 miles to the gallon, something like that. And gas was only like 89.9, so the gas wasn't too much. And we didn't spend any money at the park. We brought our own lunch, and then when we came home, we did eat out at Hardee's, and I don't know, maybe that was I guess maybe $4, something like that. So $4 and gas. So it wasn't a real expensive date. We never did do any expensive dates. We went to free concerts at a church in Pekin, Illinois. They would have concerts. They'd have some pretty big Christian artists there at times. And usually you just said, you gave a love offering, and it wasn't a real expensive thing. So we just didn't really spend an awful lot of money on any dates with each other. Esther S. says, how did you meet, and did you date long before marriage? Well, of course, we met at Illinois Central College studying broadcasting together, and we dated probably a sum total of 2 years when you subtract out the time that we broke up. But we knew each other for about 5 years total before we got married. When we got back together the second time, we only dated for about 7 months, and then we got married. And then she says, she adds, hope you feel better soon, and we do too. Hope it's feeling a little better tonight. This is Friday, April the 16th, that I'm recording this. We do hope that Hope gets well. So thank you very much, Esther. Appreciate that. Hope Mata Mua, and I hope I got your name right. I'm very bad with names. Says, what are the most important things to a long, happy marriage? And do you still have date nights? Well, we don't really have date nights. I don't think we really go out on dates. We do things together, but I don't know if we would really classify it as a date. Because of our diet, we're mostly vegan, eating. We really don't go out to eat. And if we go do anything like that, we take our kids with us. We go for walks together, and we spend time together down in the family room here in the basement. We'll read books together, or watch shows on TV together, or just sit and talk. And of course, we spend time together doing these videos. That's quite a bit of time. She spends time. She'll spend some time with me editing, and I'll spend some time with her as she's getting a program together. So. The most important things to having a long marriage, I think, is just having a deep respect and love for the person that you're with. Love is not a feeling. Maybe there's some feelings involved with it, but I really think it's more of a choice. You choose to love somebody, and love means overlooking their faults and forgiving them, and it means accepting them for the way they are, the way God has made them, and it really is something you have to work at. And so we both really work at that. We both have a lot of mutual respect for each other, and we both have a very deep trust that both of us have earned. I don't ever worry about Hope. She goes out and does things with other people, or she's out in the town. I don't worry about what she's doing or where she's at. I never have to worry about her. And she doesn't have to worry about me. So I think, having that trust and respect and love for each other is very important. And the most important thing is having a marriage that's knit together and held together with prayer and having God at the center. And that has been really the hallmark of our marriage. Aline Palumbo says, sending up prayers, you are healed and better than ever soon. Did you folks talk about money and budgeting before you were married? Well, not really budgeting. Maybe we should have. We didn't get any marriage counseling. I was almost 31 years old when we got married. I wasn't keeping a budget. I wasn't in debt, but I didn't have a lot of savings. Hope had learned how to handle money when she was living with the two girls that she lived with. She did a great job. So I really prayed for a woman that could handle money, and I got more than my bargain for with Hope. She's very good with it. I think we quickly learned how to handle money and how to budget just a few months after we got married. Well, literally about 2 months. So did we talk about it? No, we probably should have talked more about that. But we both understood the importance of handling money correctly and how important it was to have that element in tow to have a good marriage. Sarah Rikus asked, what made you decide Hope was the one for you? Well, I think it's just the way we just melded together. I really had a peace in my heart that she was the right person. And I didn't feel that there was going to be anybody else. Had I not married Hope, I would probably still be single. So I don't know how she would answer that question. I think she knew more about that before I did, but I think she kind of knew. But it'll be interesting to get her take on some of this. Natasha says, and I want to add, do any of you still get butterflies? Well, yes, I do. I still enjoy being around Hope, and she just lightens my heart when I'm with her. So I do still have butterflies with her. Elaine Bard says, get well soon, Hope, as long as we're asking nosy I've already answered that one. That's on here twice. And then Sheila Banton Cole asked the question to Hope that Hope will have to answer. I want to know, what overt gestures did he do to win you over? We know of his humor, and we can tell he made you laugh with his humor. Well, I think she would have to answer that one. For Hope, she was just a delight, and I enjoyed being around her. I can answer it by saying, at least on my part, she always made me feel very comfortable to be around. I've always felt I can just talk to her about anything. And she's a good communicator, really good communicator. So that is the end of our questions. So I thank you for spending the time with me tonight. I'll be glad when Hope comes back on. We're better as a team, I think. I don't like being solo here, but...
I've been seeing Hope a lot lately. I hope I can get her on here.
But I'm glad to at least be able to tell the story of how we met and some of our early dating life. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do. Hit that notification bell and make some comments. We'd love to hear from you. So we'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye. Okay, I just wanted to point out the equipment that I've got behind me here. This is...
Regina, that's a great question. I'm going to butt in here just for a second. No, wait a minute. Take two. I know, don't say take two.
Don't say take two.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay, you're sick. I'll give that one to you.
Thank you. Regina, that's a great question. We decided that we would take a... Crap. Look, I am sick. I'm not even on the program. This is just like a little thing of me in the middle of whatever you're doing this week.
You go for it,
that
baby.
I don't know that you're doing, that's making me really paranoid and scared.
I'll wait for you, baby.